Again, we are streaming. Okay, because my computer has some issues. I think OBS is having a bug or something. And if you can check the new stream to make sure that audio is okay, then we can continue. Like nothing happened. Good. Okay, so I had no idea what you guys were talking about because my computer was like.
So we went to satire. We went to comedians, kind of as humor as or satire as a communication tool, an effective communication tool. And then George Carlin, and then Stream Drop. So, and then George Carlin, just kind of how he started off at almost like you'd almost say it was like base level economy, where so he was just, it was the 7 dirty words, shit, piss, whatever. But that's something that it's like interesting, like 90% of people can relate to like that kind of thing. And then but by the time that he had ended his, by the time he died and everything, that he was almost completely political, cynical, just the transformation that happened to that energetic, 7 silly words you can't say until like, these cocksuckers and their laws, and just almost seeing an old man kind of go through the throes of life. And evolve his opinion, and just a person that people got to evolve with, and that was very it wasn't like an abrasive person. It was like, yes, he was a strong kind of presence, but not like a scary or one you were fearful of.
I agree with this idea that to satire and to comedy. I also think that you cannot fix cancer just by informing people about it. You need big organizations. You need a lot of investment in terms of resources and knowledge. You need all kinds of institutions. So I think that's the step that we have to move towards. Because even if you achieve your success and you become very, very popular and you transmit a message, of course you really need something to change that, to change the infrastructure. Maybe a government, maybe someone with a lot of money. But again, we are shifting the discussion into like, what should we do? And we didn't talk much about abundance, because what I had in mind from this TROM-Cast was like, how could we achieve abundance of, like, say, from technology to food, from clothes to apartments? How could such a world look like? And if you want to add something to the previous topic, basically add it, and then we can move towards that if you want.
Yeah, I think it's our usual discussion. It's 3D printing, automatization, free source, and so on.
Yeah, but think about like, I had this idea of take phones and computers. In order to make them abundant, how can you achieve that? And I gave an example of instead of every phone having inside it like a processor and video card and so forth, you basically make these devices that only receive the signal like a TV, and you have big servers all around the world, and it will distribute the power to whoever wants to do something, like Google does with servers, or Facebook, or that's how most websites work. So that was one idea of how you can make an abundant world in terms of smartphones or laptops, without having too much stuff, actually with having less stuff to put into those devices. So these are the kinds of ideas that maybe I want to bring forward.
Another idea could be by making things upgradable, so you don't always have to replace it and buy something new. And that would, of course, as well play into the market forces not being there and planned obsolescence not being a thing, and so on. So you can just, instead of having to purchase a new thing or something like that, or get or receive something else, it's just continuously upgradable. And there are such phones that you can pull it out and put a new chip in or whatever.
Yeah, and not having that mentality that you need a new phone every year.
I think your microphone is very, very low.
Sorry. I was just saying, and not to have that mentality where you need a new phone every year. Just because you already have a good one, it works. It's meant to last, and that's the one that you need because of the function. Same with.
Yeah, but Sasha, my phone doesn't have a foldable OLED screen, so I need to drop $1,600 and be cool with my friends.
Yes, that's the issue. You're not cool enough.
I'm
Phone.
I'm so like when I see such things, I'm
That's
like,
why not
what the
no,
fuck?
Other thing, it's also sharing mentality. Like in consumer-based society, we're pretty much always running to acquire more things and everything. You know, to have my own, to have my personal things, and my custom-made thing for me and everything. But even such simple things like sharing a washing machine, for example. If you live in a house where there are several flats, why each flat should have a washing machine? You use it once or I don't know 2 times a month maybe, you know. So you can have it somewhere in the basement, and there are some buildings and some communities who do this, and that's like perfect example. You can reach abundance much faster and much easier in such way of sharing. And it applies to everything, to car sharing and instrument sharing. And yeah, actually instrument sharing is so also such a great idea. If you've got some kind of tools, an instrument, like, you know, like to physically fix something or create something, also how often do you use them, or, you know, to drill a holes. And there are some activity centers popping up, which where you can go. Sometimes you need to pay some symbolical fees, usually not expensive, but you can go there, and you can have access to all various kinds of tools and instruments, and you can fix or repair something. And yeah.
Yeah, I really like the thing about Trom is that it brings out these, what people see as like a radical idea, that ownership is not actually, it's only in our imagination. You don't actually own anything. You're gonna die, and all the stuff you thought you owned is gonna be on Earth. And you never really owned it. You just thought you owned it, and everybody else thought you owned it. So that can change, and that needs to change too.
I think in the future this idea of owning will be like nightmare, because you'll think like, oh in the past you have to own something, like to take care of it, to take care of that car, to take care of that apartment. It's a lot of stress, and even in today's world you have to pay lots of money to own them. You don't just own them. You cannot just own a car. You are forced to pay an insurance for that car. No one will let you drive the car just because you bought the car. So it's more than owning. It's owning and renting in the same time somehow, in a way of forced tax. Because even if you have a home, you may say, oh, I have a home, that's perfect now. No, it's not that perfect. You have to pay for that home, all kinds of taxes. So even that idea of owning has mutated in a way that it makes more profit for some people, and it takes blood out of you like a vampire.
Yeah, the things you own end up owning you is, yeah, there's some Carlin for you. So and it couldn't be true. It couldn't be truer. And it's the same idea with like Buddhism, and it's basically, suffering comes from attachment. And I can think like how stressed I'd be, like, no, my computer parts just like burned up in a fire or something. It's like, oh my, like that's odd. Please no. And it's like you have to detach from that. So it's like I'm trying to get into like a minimalist thing, but it's like I still need to make money, so I still have to keep all these tools and extra parts, and it's like I don't want to, but I need to if I want to continue to exist.
Exactly. How much abundance would be if everyone who hoards at home stuff, from musical instruments to whatever, old laptops, will give them away. I mean, if you could like make a pile, I think it will be a massive pile. I think we can. It's massive, big. In the system, like you explained, you cannot afford to do that. I have a drone. I don't use it. Only like I use it like 2 minutes a month or something. But I cannot afford to just give it away, because that's a loss for me. And it sits here in my room. And
the most ridiculous thing I've seen personally is when a huge supermarkets throw away every night so much food. They really throw away, and they prevent people to getting it. They can put paint into it. They can mix it with some sheet, like crystal sheet from the toilets. Yeah, and even some people get arrested for stealing the rubbish. So they prevent people for getting access for free. And then why? Because they kind of cannot afford it. If they will give out food for free, who is gonna buy it? People just wait there at night when they're gonna throw out and take it. And yeah, and this really sad thing.
Because like, when I gave another example in the book, why abundance means actually less stuff. YouTube, for example, take YouTube. YouTube doesn't prepare its servers for like the all of the 2.5 or 1.5 billion people accessing the same video at once. So it's a distributed thing, meaning that even if you make food, for example, you don't imagine that even if this food is free, like all of 7 billion people will come to take food from one place. It is distributed in a way, like with apartments. You don't need, maybe you need for 7.7 billion people, maybe you only need like 8 billion apartments. You don't need like 20 billion apartments. You cannot imagine that people will live. I'm not sure if I get the message across. You should not prepare. No one prepares for like a supermarket today. Doesn't prepare for. It has like 200 shopping carts, for example. It doesn't think about we have to have a shopping cart for everyone in like 1,000 kilometers area, like thousands of shopping carts. You see, that's how in the future it will be with food. Like you have a city. And should we prepare an abundance of food here? Yes, but abundance means actually maybe less than it is today. Because like you said, Dima, supermarkets are throwing away food. So in this system, if they will not do that, that food you will think like, okay, we have this surplus of food, we have to distribute it to those who don't have. You understand what I mean? So you don't make a waste.
That's totally, then we need totally different infrastructure. If we take, for example, the same supermarkets, why they have so much stock of food, why they always buying more than they're gonna sell. So they have this in stock, you know, so the people comes and they know for sure there will be this product, I know, and that's the policy of all supermarkets. And then the way you are proposing things, it's more about creating on demand. You know, when the total amount of people calculated, and you know approximately number how many people can buy, so there is no waste. Or other option is to produce food when there is a request for the food. Let's say I'm ordering something, then it gets prepared in a place and you know delivered to me, but not before that. So food won't be wasted in such way. So, but it's totally different, like society structure, infrastructure, everything.
Completely.
To get to this point.
Completely. But I would completely agree that the level of predictability in such a future would be much higher than today, because today it's all based on desires. So, you know, you can't predict too well how many cars are going to be sold in this, because you just want more and more cars to be sold. But if you want to design a functional transportation system, you can predict, okay, if this city has this and this amount of people, you're going to design it for each whatever carrying conveyor to have this and this amount of people. So it's much more technical in that sense, and that's how it has to be.
More efficient.
Much more efficient in that regard, and energy saving and so on.
Exactly.
I think too, I mentioned also in the money game, you know, that people will understand too that it's not going to be perfect. You know, today it's like you have these supermarkets, they're competing with each other, so they have to have all these products there. You know, they have to have your fucking donuts. If they don't, the person will go to a different supermarket and they will lose profit. But in a system where you have access, you know, and you can understand that, okay, I don't need this donut, you know, I just need to eat. I need to eat something, and you know, it doesn't have to be, you know exactly. You know, you can have some mistakes, and it's not going to kill you.
Because that's the thing. I don't think you can ever achieve a total abundance of everything. That's why I gave an examples like what happens when there is no abundance. Well, if in general it's abundance, there might be some problems depending what are you talking about. You are talking about needs or wants. However, because most of other things will be abundant, if you talk about such a society, then such problems will have a less of an impact, because like Sasha explained, if you have access to so many things and you don't have access to maybe one thing, you don't see it as a huge problem. Only maybe when, say, I give an example of organ transplant, there probably will be like scarcity of organs, you know, and this is a need, this is not a want, and this could create problems. But even today they are trying to implement a system of access for organ transplant that is not based on profit. You know, it's based on who is more close to the organ, who matches the organ better. So it doesn't matter if you have so much money, you cannot you know, get the organ before other people. So I think we can come up with all kinds of systems like that to deal even with scarcity where there will be scarcity.
For sure.
So maybe we should talk more about what this world would actually look like. So you would see access centers where you can get food, for example, or you can get electronics, clothes.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
will be
exactly.
more decentralized. I don't think it will be like a center of everything. I think it will be more decentralized in pockets where you can find whatever you may need. Like, and today with, you know, the digital world, you don't even have to have like a big storage here. You can have distributed, and if you need something, you order it, and if it's automatic, some robot will bring it to you. Basically, you don't have to move to other places to get what you need.
So we will be passive and lazy.
Because like Jack Fresco explained, always he used the example of libraries. You go to a library and, you know, that's kind of the concept.
Yeah.
But in our world, in this more like modern world, it will be more decentralized in my view.
Exactly. Yeah.
And digitization is a huge part of abundance, because you don't have to produce a billion CDs. You have to produce just one copy of a movie. Digital movie, it can be streamed on so many computers. You don't have to produce like with 3D printing. It will give rise to, it is already in the process of giving rise of on-demand like asking for a product and the product will be made without making huge pile of the same kinds of products and then trying to sell them, you know. So
Guys, how do you think, is it possible to achieve abundant world within monetary system somehow? Like one proposition is universal basic income, for example, or any others approaches.
I mean, with universal basic income, I mean, people, if businesses still function, they're still going to get, you know, the mentality of people isn't going to change. You know, they're going to have some certain amount of money, but they're going to want more because, you know, new phones are going to be thrown at them, new cool clothes that they're going to want to buy. So they're going to try to find a means to make money anyway, you know, to buy these new cool items. So I don't see universal basic income as really helping that much.
No, maybe
Yeah.
I'll just give an example of it. Maybe there are some other ways. Like my question is it, how do you think, is it possible to have abundance within the monetary system in any way?
no.
But abundance kind of gets rid of the need to make a profit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because if you have abundance, then you cannot basically sell stuff. If you have, how do you see abundance? What do you mean by abundance? Abundance of stuff reported to the people, or abundance of stuff?
Exactly what we spoke about.
Access.
Like access to things, equal rights, and so on.
Yeah.
If it's not in imbalance, then the system cannot survive, because you always have this cyclical consumption. You have to make money from something and you have to sell stuff to people all the time. That's why they make the foldable phones now, because they made the bezel-less screens and now they have to make them foldable, and in 5 years they will put the buttons back and people will be like, wow, the retro buttons are back. That's the society.
You're doing excellent in here.
You should start your business.
I think Apple is already having a model of that. The new Apple with the button back, I'm sure.
Revolutionary.
That's why it's not going to work in this society, because people will look like, for example, in terms of digital access, we should have an abundance today of digital access through the not only the what is online, but through the gadgets, because so many people have phones and so forth. Yet, because of our society, this abundant world of information, of ones and zeros, digital world, is put on like behind barriers all of the time. That's why it costs to use Netflix or Spotify or whatever.
Yeah, completely. I would say that today's world and today's monetary system or trade game we play puts a barrier between the needs of the people and them having access to it. So it creates an abundance of things, whatever, like there are so many empty apartments, but there's so many homeless people. and it just creates a barrier for those homeless people to access those apartments. It creates a barrier for hungry people to access free food. It creates a barrier for people who want to listen to music, but now they have to purchase the music. So there will continuously be growth, and GDP just will be a measure of them producing and consuming more. But there will always be barriers for people's needs not being taken care of and blocked by this trade game.
Yeah, totally agree on all of that.
You're trying to like play the devil's advocate here.
No, I'm just.
That's good.
It's good. It's good. Yeah.
It's just a discussion, like generally, if it's possible. I'm also consider it's not, because you never can achieve equality between the persons when somebody can have more access, more opportunities than the others. It's no way gonna work.
Completely.
So how will we make? Okay, say then that.
No, I just wanted to say something funny. There's this quote about universal basic income that I really like. It goes as follows: universal basic income is like the end of Monopoly, when the guy that's won starts giving you money, so you keep playing, and he can keep taking it.
Yup.
Yeah.
So
That's perfectly put.
So it's just.
That's perfectly put. And I use the same example with Monopoly. When people say about universal basic income, I say to them, how do you start the Monopoly board game? All of us equal. You give and then you give all of us, when you go around, you give the same amount of money. And yet, what happens? Huge inequality. And that's happening.
But then, speaking about like past societies, for example, we can take USSR. So Soviet Union, and they also had this idea of kind of abundance in some way, but more about equality. Yet the people didn't have any abundance. They had sort of equality if you're not politician, because politicians are higher, they're super race, other are equal. But besides that, there was no abundance, no kind of equality in a sense too.
Yeah, I think I've seen I read about technocracy, for example, because even USSR was inspired by such a movement, because they were like, let's be technological and let's make one fork, and that fork is the best fork instead of making 1,000 forks. Let's make something very practical. But I don't think that's the way that you have to do it. You cannot force it, and you have to have, like I argue in the book, the Money Game and Beyond, you have to have variety. Like, I think the only reason that today's system works, this kind of capitalist system, is because it gives people the illusion of abundance, actually. But it's your problem if you cannot buy that shit, But shit is everywhere. You want to go into a supermarket, it's full. You want to have a Ferrari, you can have it, if you work hard. So they give the illusion of abundance and of you being the fault here. And why those other systems didn't work? Because a bunch of people wanted to say, we are going to organize the world for you, and that's not a good idea. Let that for a bunch of people to tell you that you only have to have one fork on one pair of shoes. You should never go down this road. You have to make an abundant world that is also full of varieties and people can engage into, and there is more decentralized, like the open source, for example, in terms of software, where I can go and I can make my own Linux distribution, So even if I don't know how to do that, at least you put the blame on me. You say, Theo, if you learn how to do it, you can do it. That's how this system works today. Because they say, if you work hard enough, you can be a millionaire, you can have a big house. And we have to give the same, not an illusion, but the same kind of opportunities in this abundant world for people to engage and to progress and to change the system here and there, if you can get involved.
Yeah, I also see the open source community as a perfect example and how decentralization could work. It's a really amazing idea. It's actually I think like from my perspective, it's like the only alternative we really have. It's like to make everything decentralized and open source, and people can modify and adjust and create stuff for their own. They're not forced. There's the tools, and you can just either take it what there is or to make it your own. Nobody gonna control you or nobody gonna tell you what to do. It's up to you, and it's such a beautiful idea. Yeah, the other question which arises, why like having all these ideas today, it's so unpopular. It's really like open source stuff, software. People, if you're on a Linux, you can get a lot of software for free, which is super cool, super useful. It's not worse than all proprietary softwares. Yet still, it's like 1% of all computers users
3%.
using Linux. 3%, okay. So why why is that? Like like Tia, you once said it's perfectly about Linux. It's free and super cool, but nobody uses it.
Yeah.
And yeah, why?
Yeah, because Windows is selling computers with Windows and Apple is selling computers with Apple, and they are so big that Linux, has no place because it makes no money out of this.
Yeah, because they basically brainwash people with adverts, with help of influencers, of popular artists or sportsmen, and through the adverts to make some items appear to be cool and
Yeah, but in the
and
case
worth
of
it.
Apple or Microsoft, yeah. I wanted to say quickly, in the case of Microsoft or Apple, it's not even about influencers, because they have so much like market share. All of the stores are full of their computers, so that's why they are so huge.
It's even hard to buy a computer without any operating system, without Windows or without Mac.
Yeah.
Really, it's not so easy. You have to really search.
Exactly. And people are not even aware of Linux, I would say. Most people are just completely brainwashed by those two big brands and don't see any other option.
Yeah, but it's a very good example with open source because, and I think I want to stress on this, it's very important to let people know that they can get involved, even if it's hard, because I cannot complain. I cannot go to Linux, or there is no place for me to go and say, hey, I want this feature. Why don't you implement this feature? Because they will say, if you want it, implement it. And this is how like it's a bomb that you diffuse, and you don't create conflict because of that, and you put the blame in a way on people for them to do and get involved. That's how a society of abundance should look like, not a few people on top saying this is what you should do and this is what abundance I think it should mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
it reinforces engagement, open source. Unlike like a centralized system or pyramid system, it's like passivity. It's they are responsible and we will suffer the consequences and then we will hate on them. Whereas open source is more decentralized and it's like reinforces the people, shit, I gotta do something about this now, because we are all carry the weight together, and that's a much more collective mindset, which is gonna help a lot.
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Other question came to my mind. Can we have abundance within political system?
What do you mean?
What does that mean?
Like to having the same politician, the same parties, and the same elections and debates, and putting the same people in charge to make general decisions for large groups of people.
I don't think we can. I mean, if you talk about a society that is sane, I don't think you use democracy to vote on how we should organize our healthcare or something like that. You will have experts, and whoever is more apt for the job, it usually goes through. Even today, for things that are made by or financed by governments, like the healthcare, it's very likely that they know how to organize themselves if it's not a huge financial pressure. I mean, you have such things in place already, like NASA or other organizations. Like, I don't think anyone votes for that, and no one will agree to vote on such things ever.
I
like how Fresco. Yeah.
No, go on.
I like how Fresco talks shit about politicians. They don't know anything.
Yeah.
They don't know how to solve problems. Ask them how to feed 7.5 billion people. They don't know clean mode of transportation. They don't know anything. So,
I'm just curious if I'm curious about if we could achieve abundance within our political system. Let's say democracy is the most popular form of governments today. Like I personally think it's not, because even in a democracy, although I don't accept it or don't believe, I don't know how to put it correctly, it's not so clear, it's not so honest, and governments are funded by private companies a lot, and they influence their decisions and the way they build infrastructure and decisions they make, and it's the same business. So like for me, I don't see abundance is possible within democracy or any other
I think you have an
I would-
abundance.
yeah.
You have an abundance
Yeah.
in politics. You don't have variety.
Yeah.
You don't have what?
Variety.
Variety?
Variety. You have abundance so many political parties, like you say, but variety, like they are all the same.
Oh yeah, right.
Mm.
You know, yeah, go on.
No, I was just gonna say that I would say abundance maybe exists in terms of having access to all the goods and services people might want within today's world. In some selected tribes, maybe, like if, for example, in some small countries or nations, like in Qatar, for example, or maybe in certain small countries in Europe, maybe all the citizens there are granted access to goods and services within the system because they're given like a high degree of economic security and so on. But that's very separate from like viewing everybody as one inclusive species and actually taking care, because they're living on behalf of the rest of the population. So I would say abundance is only possible within like a selected tribe on the expense of everybody else in a way.
Yeah, I mean, politics today is fully integrated into the trade system, so I don't see how it would function when there is abundance. If you can't have, if you have abundance, then if you can't have trade, you know, in the way that it is today, there'll be no use for today's human politics.
I think we should also emphasize on the fact that you can have abundance and still have trades. Like YouTube will say we have an abundance of videos, but you have to watch advertising. Even though it's in abundance, you can find everything there. So trade is still a problem. You know, even if you have abundance, you have to, like, even like Seb was saying, maybe in a country you have an abundance, maybe access to healthcare and stuff like that, but you have to engage into some sort of trade. You have to respect some rules, you have to behave yourself, and so forth. So it's very important, because people say the antidote for this world, the solution, it's abundance. I say yes, but never forget about trade, because there will be many companies who will say we make transportation abundant, like we talked about, but you have to watch advertising and transform into a consumer. You know, we make healthcare abundant, but they take your data and they take money from other sides, from you eventually, or something like that.
Completely, and that's why the trade-free concept is the most important, because you can have access to everything you need, but you will have to submit to the rules that you're playing by, and there will always be conflict whenever there's trade. And
is this guy Peter Diamandis, if you know him? I used to read his stuff, and he promoted this idea of let's make an abundance, but he promoted the same kind of abundance of this trade-based world. Like he said, we will travel for free with Google cars because we watch advertising. We will have access to education online, but you have to give your data away or your attention and so forth. So I started to see, like, okay, this is something like wrong here. This guy is talking about abundance, but he's talking about making a business out of abundance. That was wrong, you know. Made me think, like, even water, it's abundant, but other companies make you buy, even make me buy many times water, because I don't know.
If your water polluted in the area you're living, you know, the prices will go up for the bottled water.
Yeah, that's not a good example, because instead of in this kind of abundant society that is not based on trade, if there is a lack of water, for example, in an area, you make it so that you put pipes and so forth, so that everyone has access. Like whenever you open the water faucet, you get water and you drink. In today's world, no, it's a business. You have to put water in some plastic bottles, and you give them to people, you know, which is a backwards way of dealing with resources.
Yeah.
For profit. Okay.
Okay, guys, as usual, the same stuff. Trade. Nothing new. We're like politicians here.
No, those are good questions. It's always good and important to play the devil's advocate, I think, so we can like cover maybe some more perspectives on things. Yeah.
And it's also that we don't only talk about, we don't only talk about like, oh, this is problem, this is the solution is trade. We also give examples of like how abundance world would look like with the phones, like with food, maybe like with other things. So we can expand on such things, because of course the problem is always that trade thing, because that's why that's the this project is relying, it's revolving around. But the details matter, so that people understand in detail the problem and in detail what solutions could be implemented.
Yeah, for example, with clothes, you can produce clothes as well that are hydrophobic and don't wear down. So using much better materials and so on can make a t-shirt last for a week or 2 weeks or maybe even forever. If it doesn't like suck in sweat and stuff like that. I saw there are a couple of t-shirts like that, and you can do the same with shoes and other types of
But what is interesting,
products.
Seb, what is interesting is that today, I don't think anyone throws clothes away because they're torn apart, or they buy new ones. So even
you're right.
even in today's world, they are quite resistant and they are quite resilient. But people have to.
You're right. Completely. It's very funny. It's very funny. That's a good point. And there's the same thing goes with education. Like we have access to so much knowledge online nowadays, but the trade game we play pushes people to go and pay for education and so on, which is, they will not get much out of it compared to what they could get online potentially.
Yeah, because I mean the education they pay for, I mean, the institute teaches them how to work a job. Whereas if you go online and learn whatever we study, it's not going to help you get a job, that's for sure.
I think education is the easiest.
In today's world, it's not about educating people, it's about getting to a job.
Yeah, that's where we already had a discussion on education.
Yeah. To make education abundant,
is not about making people smarter.
Yeah. To make education abundant, I think is the easiest with the online world. It's the easiest out of pretty much everything, because if you make a great course or a great presentation for a website or something, that course can be spread to billions of kids. You don't have to have a teacher in one classroom. And I know that they have this idea when TV became a thing. They said, oh, they will destroy schools because teachers will be on TV and kids will learn from home. And in theory, from a technological perspective, that was possible. But because they ignored this trade-based society where parents have to go to work, kids have to go to school, it's a big business, of course this never happened, and that's why it will never happen with the internet either, because they are too integrated into this society. You see, so from technological perspective, you could have made the education abundant like 100 years ago, or let's say 70 years ago, But
yeah. Maybe I have a question regarding the future, and that is, what do you guys imagine like abundance to be like in terms of social connection and stuff like that? So connecting with others and those types of things, in terms of having an abundance of that in the future.
I think you can take examples from different communities today around the world. So if you go, for example, to an island, take Hawaii for an example, Molokai. It has an abundance of mangoes and coconuts and bananas and a lot of great fruit, for example. And the people there are quite content in the way they live. They're not like, they're not really struggling to survive because they have an abundance of food. They have a lot of fruit, fish, and Molokai, for example, it's a small island. It's still a bit different than the rest of definitely than the rest of America. And I think that from what I saw there, they're really social. They're happy to share the stuff that they have. When I lived on Hawaii, somebody had bananas. They had lots of bananas, and they said, Sasha, after work, just go drive to my house. I'm not going to be there. Just take my bananas because I have so many bananas. And I was stoked. They took bananas every day, and whenever I had something to give, to that person, I would give them something too. So I think socially, people become much nicer in a world where they have access to what they need. Whereas, you know, for example, if you live in a city where everything is scarce and you have to work, you know, just to get one freaking banana, you know, and it's hard for you to do that, you're going to be a lot more edgy with people. You're not going to trust people so much. You're not just going to give away your bananas. You just worked your ass off for the banana.
I think in terms of abundant relationships, I think we need an abundant world of access and stuff so we can create quality relationships. Because relationships you can, in terms of abundance, I don't think it matters as much. It matters in terms of quality. Because us as humans, I don't know if we can have like more than 10 good friends, because it could be trickier even if in this kind of perfect kind of world. So I think a world of abundance will make quality relationships.
Yeah, because you're not needing anything from anybody else. You're only friends with that person because you enjoy spending time together. You enjoy each other's company.
Because in the future,
You're not needing
people will wonder in the future, like in the past, how could like Theo be friends with Dima when Dima has this like so many cool musical instruments and Theo doesn't have them? You know, they will think like it's hard to have even relationships. Like you have a car, I don't have a car. You know, it's kind of shitty. You know, maybe I want a car.
Completely.
So, in abundant world, we would have a lot of stuff to share, but nobody will need it because everyone could have access.
Yeah.
Sharing won't be a thing.
Yeah, maybe sharing is relevant because I can take a musical instrument from whatever, not from Dima.
Yeah. So no one.
But
no
you
one...
cannot play like me.
Yeah, that's a good point. But if there are people online who can teach me, I don't need you.
Yeah, you have to pay. You have to pay.
If there is an abundance of them.
There will be abundance of money. Don't worry.
Yeah, because that's also a resource that we didn't talk about, the abundance of volunteers. It's not only about stuff, it's also about volunteers. Because you need help with something, we need volunteers as well to be abundant, you know, in all kinds of areas that we cannot maybe automate.
Yeah, for sure.
And then on that point, I would just agree that you know, a system that you have evidence of taking care of you and all the people around you. It's like this project is enough for me to volunteer for. So like I already know that's possible of humanity, that they can pour their time into something that they really believe in, and then on top of that is actually taking care of them and listening to, you know, the voice that they have.
Yeah, imagine how much stuff people will create if they will live in a world where they don't have to trade their energy and attention and so forth for other things. I mean, they will create a new kinds of domains in this world. I mean, even if you, like, people don't realize this, but we need so many other people, so many volunteers in this world, because take animals or insects, you need so many people to categorize them, and the ocean is unexplored, the outer space, we have so many things to do, but we pollute with shitty jobs instead of, like, I want to say that if we create a world of abundance, it's not like people would be like, oh, I'm lazy, what can I do now? I have no purpose in this world. Like, it's not going to be like that. Only simple-minded people in this society think like that because they know very little about the world.
I mean, there's so much to do. There's always so much. It's never ending. I don't know how you can even possibly, like, consider, you know, having access to everything that you want and sitting on the couch all day.
Definitely. Yeah, but you would then need a society as well that reinforces you to go out and explore and educate you in that regard. So it also comes like with a value shift in education, because just giving people access, like you said, is also not going to cut it. It's also all about changing people's values and giving them the love of life to then explore and dig into whatever they're interested in, because now they don't have to be dependent on their job, giving them income for survival and so on, or dependent on their family, or dependent on so many different factors that causes so much pain and suffering within this system and forces you to do stuff that you don't want to do.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to think that people will become lazy in such a society. Yeah. I think it's ridiculous. I think, nah, when I hear this argument, I'm like, you know, do you have 2 hours? Because I want to show you some cool stuff, you know. We have so much stuff that is not explored, so many problems, so many mysteries, so many are crazy, you know, it's crazy. People don't know about such things. They will think that, oh, I'm going to get fat and everything will come to me like food and I will watch TV all the time. No.
That's because today that's what they do on their day off,
Yeah.
you know, when they don't have to work.
Yeah,
Sit
exactly.
on the couch and drink beer.
But none of us here have normal jobs, so maybe we don't understand them.
I
Okay.
wanted to kind of ask you guys. So, if we took an example, say a phone or clothes, something like that, how would this abundance, you know, look from the production line, from the very beginning to getting the resources in the very beginning to distributing? How do you see it?
With clothes?
Take an example. Yeah, clothes, electronics, like whatever you want.
Well, potentially with 3D printing, other technological advances, you might be able to decentralize it completely and print it in your home. Like same thing we discussed with food the other time. So that could be an option, or through nanotechnology potentially on the horizon that could make things much easier and effective. So localization, I would say, would be key in order to minimize the amount of energy used. So you could produce it locally with different means.
I think that
Like with food,
if we
for
take
example.
all of the shit that we produce today, all of the waste, in this kind of more efficient future but abundant, you don't even have to mine for resources for a long time. Like if you take all of the shit that we throw away and you recycle it, maybe you don't even have to mine a lot
Yeah.
for resources.
You don't need like child slaves mining, you know?
Oh, that I think. Thank you.
I thought we would have an abundance of those.
Abundance of child.
Yeah.
Let's hope not.
Yeah.
If it's a trade-free society, then it shouldn't be like that, because there will be a trade for those kids. So you detect the problem there. You say, look, those kids have to work for something because they are forced to work. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
No, maybe they have nothing to do, so that's why they go.
Then they are not slaves.
to the mines.
Yeah, that's true.
Then they do it for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, then that's a
Kids
okay.
love digging around in mud, so
Black lung is my favorite.
Yeah, let's hope that's not going to happen. Well, we have automation.
Children robots.
The thing with clothes, for example, because that's actually interesting. It could be quite difficult, as far as I understood technologically, to create clothes without humans being involved and doing stuff, because they are so like a bit difficult to put together in an automated fashion. But I think people are inventive, like they invented like the International Space Station and stuff like that. Probably they can solve this as well.
For sure. And just like you said, there's probably more than enough clothes already produced now for this to go around. The amount of shit that exists, if you would just use it intelligently, would cover
And
everybody's
if we
needs.
don't have to change the clothes so often, because
Exactly.
There is a good comment on the chat about clothing. I can read it. A product can seem abundant like clothes, but in reality, if you have a body size outside of the norm, there is very limited option. Capitalism sells to non-existent people we need to try to be valued. So, and that's the thing with decentralization. When you will be able to just print the clothes you need, you won't have this problem anymore. It's like, if your body, you are super tall, or your heads legs are taller than normal, it's really hard today to find shoes for you, if you've got like really large legs. And if you've got access to 3D printing, it's not an issue anymore. You just print it.
yeah, it's a good point. That for example, to give the same kind of example for another domain that I gave in a book, progeria. It's a very, very rare disease where kids get old very, very fast and they die at age 12 or so. And it was a documentary about a family who had a kid like that, Sam, and they were both doctors, and they started to get involved and try to find a treatment for progeria because pretty much no one was interested in that. It was such a unique a minority kind of thing that in this world you cannot make money out of that, you know. So in this kind of work that we talk about, if people could get involved, like in the open source, like Dimas says, then you have, I think, more chances than today to make clothes or to research for a treatment and so forth. A doctor is not from another planet, you know. It's still human. If you want to become a doctor, you can become a doctor and solve your kid's problem maybe, or advance the research.
And then also technologies help, have a huge help here, like this automated computer Watson, I think, which can prescribe you any medicine based on, you know, on your analysis. You can give him like blood analysis, urine analysis, and he can analyze it and just prescribe you a drug or create a unique one, which will be special, you know, suitable only for you, like especially for your needs.
Personalized.
No, yeah, and no doctor can do this today, you know. So.
Yeah, I think we have to. I gave this example with Watson, but it's also that we have to be careful because this is a company, and I've read about them, and they are quite exaggerating.
The idea.
Yeah, that's a perfect idea. Yeah, I love that idea because if you take healthcare, instead of putting today you have a family doctor in most tribes in the world, and this family doctor has like hundreds of patients, and he has like 5 to 10 minutes for each patient, which is crazy. Instead of staying home, you know, and diagnose yourself and through an AI, so then you can go to further tests. You have to go to a hospital today, you have to stay in line, you have to use a car. You see, this is another way of creating abundance to digitizing. I think it was another question. Where is the line for trade? If you do a DNA test to know your heritage, can they use the other available info without your consent? How do you prevent the use of the info when it's there? Well, today of course they use the data because that's their business when you do such a test. That's why it's so cheap. Some are free, but they are not trade free. If you create a world of abundance that like what we talk about, the idea is here to eliminate this need for trade, basically make trade obsolete. So in that sense, if you give data, your DNA to your doctor, if the doctor doesn't have any, or the company or the group there, any interest to do something with your data, they are not going to do anything with your data. That's the idea. If someone will give me something, I will feel unequal, someone says. And
that's me.
Ah, that's you.
I'm responding.
Okay.
But that's what I was saying is that's that trade kind of, it's changing the values, the mentality that there needs to be, you know, I need to profit off this person's data for me to keep doing what I'm doing. It's no, I just need to, you know, this person is requesting a service and I'm going to fulfill that because that's what I'm good at or whatever. It's changing that mindset that their money needs to be made on this transaction happening here or exchange. And then that's very reinforced in this society. So even me receiving a gift, if I feel unequal to the other person, I want to balance that out. If there's a 4 on this side of the equation, I want to put 4 here, and that's very heavily reinforced by this society. Only recently, I'm kind of addressing that and that realizing that's even happening.
Yeah, but that's also not a trade, because if someone gives something to you without asking something in return, of course, this is just an act of kindness. If you feel, in a sense, obliged to give something back, that's your problem, you know. But we are not talking about these kinds of things. These are not kind of trades.
Yeah, so that's like definitely just to do with me, but me visualizing like a gift as a trade, that's like how corrupted my view has been in this kind of living in the society for like 30 years. Is like, that's how warped your thinking can get to that level.
I think what Cody means is that even we are in a such trade-based mind all the time, the whole society, so we cannot accept gifts anymore. When it somehow feel, you know, we have like to give something back, you know, to have this trade moment again, and it's so deep into us. So yeah, it's really hard. I know what Cody talking about. I had the same feeling some time ago, some years ago, and it took me a while I can, you know, learn to actually accept the help or accept the gifts just and not giving something in return. And when I help somebody, I don't expect anything back. And people wants to give me money when I help them, and I never take them because I said no. If I would took money, I give you the service, and I'm not fucking giving you service. I'm helping you. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, and it
Yep.
feels so good when you actually, when you actually engage in those kinds of, in that kind of relationship or what, when it's completely trade free. I had a lot of experience with this with couch surfing. I couch surfed all over the world, and people take me in for free, not expecting anything back. And I've showed up to someone's house and they gave me their car, like they just met me. They just gave me their car and they said, drop me off at work and then you can take my car and drive it around. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, okay, thanks. And it's amazing. And then I want to do the same thing for other people, and it feels good.
And some people will argue that perhaps those people who host you in their homes, they want something from you, because maybe if you behaved in a bad way or if you were messy or something, they will say, out, I don't want you here, so only you can stay here only if you are maybe Christian or maybe you pray before dinner, but these are things that we should, that's my point here, we should not concern about here. If you put a microscope on any idea, you'll find such weird kind of things, only if something is obvious, like you don't get food unless you are a Christian and you go to church, then that's a problem. That's a direct trade. I wanted to mention this.
Yeah, and I mean, even on couch surfing, you can find those a lot. You can find tons of guys that are trying to just get hot chicks to stay with them just because they want to look at hot chicks, But you can easily see that that's what's going on, and I just don't stay with them, So the real.
They want just to look.
Oh, whatever. It depends on the person, But I mean. But the essence, and I hate when people do that, especially with couch surfing, because it's like it ruins the entire idea. And I mean, not just with chicks, some people like in poor countries, not even just poor countries, but it happens where they kind of expect you to, I don't know, help them out, pay for something. And I've had that experience once in Sri Lanka where I had to sit down with a person, and because he was asking my dad to pay for something. My dad and I stayed couch surfing with a family in Sri Lanka, and he basically was trying to get him to pay for something, and my dad didn't have any money, and neither did I. And the point of couch surfing is that it's supposed to be a trade-free interaction, and I had to sit down with him and have a real talk about this because I was also accepting hosts, a month before that when I was living on $2 or $3 a day. And I never asked anything in return, and that's supposed to be the way couch surfing is. But of course, like Theo said, you put a microscope on it, you can always find.
Yes, because even those guys who want hot chicks, right? They lack something. They lack those hot chicks. They have to trade for that. They have to. In this society, it could be very challenging. You have to. If you don't have money, it's quite difficult. You have to have a nice car. You have to. It's a lot of trade, and then they say, oh, look, it's easy. I have an apartment, I can rent, but I want some hot chicks. It's a trade.
How we can get abundance of hot chicks?
How can get abundance of hot chicks? I don't know. You come up with a solution.
Yeah, I think
opportunity. It's a value system.
And secondly, it's technology, which is.
It's a problem of values.
Sex robots and stuff like that.
Yeah, sex robots, right.
I think what is more plausible is if we have more time to explore other cultures and meet other people,
Yeah, I mean, it's a shift of values in today's society. Like, today's society makes sex scarce because basically women and sex and like their freaking private parts are like scarce resources, and that makes like men chase after them, and they basically like run away or play games because of this, because their resources are like taboo in this culture.
And you can trade with them.
Much open society.
In
yeah,
the society.
Exactly, and then it creates so many more problems and like real deep psychological problems for many people. And it creates like an insanity. It just makes society go even more insane.
On both parts.
If they had a different mentality. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's the same part like we mentioned with relationships.
Yeah.
Completely. How can there be any like uncorrupted relationships within the system? Everything to some extent has some form of trade always in the back of it, because you will be staying in a house. Who's paying for the house? How much is it? This, that. All of it has a number on it, and all of it has some kind of.
That's why marriage is such a tricky business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So if you had so if you had access to an abundance of things, you would only be with the person just because you really enjoy spending time with them. I think that's really important because that will actually bring real value to your life.
Completely.
yeah, how it is today that some people are together, like this chick is with that guy for the car. I mean, or something like that. This is such a fucked up value system. It's really backwards. Like
Status or a house, and then they get stuck together because they bought things together.
exactly, yeah. And you are in a business together.
Yeah.
Completely. That's how it is all over. And some people go to other countries and kill other people also just because of trade, because they believe in a nation or believe in the country that they have to kill and so on.
Okay. Do you want to say more about the topic, or we can just talk a bit about the news and then?
I think let's go for the news.
Yeah.
Okay. So first we have our book, The Money Game and Beyond, where we talk about abundance. So if you want to read it, we go in more details about the topic. We have a documentary as well from Videonit. It's The Choice Is Ours. I recommend that documentary is from TVP, and they talk about abundance as well. I'm not going to load the website now, but you can find it on videonit.com. And I have a few news, not many news this week. So, for example, let me see if it loads. Okay, it's an article about, it's a book basically, or it's basically a paper, a scientific paper looking at the impact of citizen scientists on science to see their effect. It's something that we talk about here. We talked today about, because it's human resources. Like, look at these volunteers. Even today we have volunteers who go and they do science basically without having any training in science, just because they are guided by scientists, and they can do a lot of research. So it's interesting to see their impact on science. And another news, it's about the release of Riot. Riot, I want to talk about this a little bit because it's again about abundance. This Riot is like Slack or like Skype in a way, those messengers that many people are using, but this one is decentralized and is trade-free. Basically, you can use Riot and you can install it on your own server. That's the beauty of your open source, and this is how it creates abundance. Because a group of people, like the people behind Riot, they create this software and they give it away as trade-free, and you can take it, you can improve it, you can make it your own. That's how the society should work like. So yeah, it's a cool idea. This is one example. Okay, if anyone else wants to talk about anything, did you read the news, or I can go to them?
I did. I guess the next one is the 3D printed snacks or whatever. So I think she's using food waste or food that they would throw away, and then like turning that into, I guess, a edible printing medium.
Yes, delicious dishes.
Yeah, and then I guess the food is baked, so it's basically creating like long shelf life lasting healthy food out of I guess mostly waste. I think they're saying like 75%, so like 3/4 what would normally go in the trash, I guess, would be remade into another dish with 3D printing. Yeah,
very cool.
That's interesting approach. Okay, we have one about again, it's from Citizen Scientists. They have like a library day as far as I understood, they have this day where they do like a collaboration with libraries to spread this kind of citizen scientist idea, and to make like some kind of workshops, not workshops, but all kinds of activities in terms of citizen scientists. And the idea of a library actually is very interesting, because I think at the core is what we talk about, this idea of let's have like a free place for our citizens to go and have access to all kinds of things like the internet and so forth. So we have to expand that kind of mindset. So it's something that we even see in today's society to a certain extent. Okay, so my computer is at 100% again.
So privacy online. The Wayback Machine is basically an internet archive. So like you can go back and be like Google 1998 and see like Google as it was in that time. And I guess it is being blocked in, I think it's just the UK right now. So like you can't even kind of.
Oh no, it's in many countries, but this article is only about UK, but it's in many countries, unfortunately.
Yeah. So yeah, this is happening across the pond. So this hasn't been gotten over here yet, but I know it's getting kind of rampant over there. Adults.
Yeah, I think this thing is going to crash again. So if it crashes, then that's it. The stream.
Okay. It's all good. But yeah, just that being kind of blocked at an ISP level, so people aren't the option to like, and what is the reasons, kind of just it's not a good way or like a memory hole, if you will. And then the last article was just about
that's
so time being the fourth dimension, so that they're able to print these things with a 3D printer, and then they assemble into the structure kind of automatically, or when you add energy.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's science for you.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me, but I don't think, I think that my computer is screaming now.
Go down here.
I don't know if the stream is working anymore. Well, that's it. I think can't do a thing. And that's it.
There's just comments in the chat from everything's abundant. There's no need to trade.
No, the computer is frozen. So I have no idea.